Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on. There we go. Let's go. There we go. We're good. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Kris, or welcome back. This is Most Forgotten Hero in the U.S. history. Most Forgotten Hero in U.S. history. Get that right. George Rogers Clark. I have a book about the man. I read it. Oh, there it is. I read it. It's pretty good. Too far away to get it. But anyways, this is about George Rogers Clark, but they're also going to cover, this is a little magnet that I got. Let's see if you can zoom in. Let's see, it's hard to read. This is the George Rogers Clark National Historical Park. This is Fort Sackville, which I believe they're going to cover in here, judging by the last video I did. Fort Sackville was built by the French and Indian War. The British took it over. American Revolutionary War. The Americans took it over under George Rogers Clark. It says the British flag would not be raised above Fort Sackville, February 25th, 1779. 2 days from now. At 10 a.m., the garrison surrendered to American Colonel George Rogers Clark. His American army, aided by French residents of the Illinois country, had marched through freezing floodwaters to gain this victory. The fort's capture assured United States claims to the frontier, an area nearly as large as the original 13 states. Now, I already pointed this out before, but this is in Vincennes, Indiana. And in Vincennes, they have 9th President William Henry Harrison's home called Grouseland. You can see a picture of it. It's really nice. I went there. Don't have a picture of it on a magnet, just a picture of Mr. William Henry Harrison. And it says, Indiana Territorial Governor, 1800 to 1812, 9th U.S. President. And then I showed this off on the Grouseland video that I just did. But here's my visit to Grouseland. And you get your little, your little brochure. Kind of tells you everything. But it's in Vincennes, Indiana. It's on the Wabash River. I recommend it just because it's a historical place, and I think that people would like it. You can spend all day there. It's really nice. Just going through the city. So I have already covered one video by this channel. This is Family Tree Nuts History and Genealogy Service. I've already subscribed, so you click that. Okay. I opened up 2 videos at once. My bad. If you can do that for me, it helps out tremendously. You can subscribe to the channel, my channel. You can donate to the channel through the thanks button. And if you did, your name will be sponsored in this video. I'm going to shut up now. Let's get into the video.
The Washington of the West.
Give me 1 second. Okay. Change my mind. I went ahead and grabbed the George Rogers Clark book that I have by William R. Neester. And the little thing is, I Glory in War. This was a really good book. If anyone has interest in it, it's a quick read. Give me a second. 333 pages. It's not bad. Oh, come on. There we go. All right. I did not visit his grave. I just visited the fort. Back to the video.
Of the Old Northwest. The founder of Louisville. Hey everybody, this is Colonel Carson with Family Tree Nuts, and I'm in Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm at the gravesite of General George Rogers Clark. And by the way, if you like our videos, make sure you subscribe to our free YouTube channel and click that little bell so you get notifications as to when we post new videos. George Rogers Clark was born in 1752 near Charlottesville, Virginia. He was taught to survey land by his grandfather. In 1771, he took his first surveying trip into Kentucky. That's right, 1771, that's 4 years before settlement. In 1774, he served as a captain in the Virginia militia in Lord Dunmore's War. In June of 1776, he was sent as a delegate to the Virginia legislature to request to make Kentucky a county of Virginia. In 1777, there was many attacks on the Kentucky frontier by Native Americans that were backed by the British. The colonial army could not spare men or supplies to Kentucky. Clark requested to Governor Patrick Henry to lead a secret mission against the British outpost north of the Ohio River. In 1778, he set up an outpost on Corn Island at the Falls of the Ohio. This eventually became the city of Louisville. In 1778, Clark led 175 men and took 3 British forts and several Native American villages. The British Lieutenant Governor William the Hairbuyer Harrison recaptured Vincennes, but Clark led a surprise winter attack and retook the fort, including Hamilton. He sent Hamilton through Kentucky and sent him back to the east as a prisoner. In 1780, the British and the Native Americans led more attacks on Kentucky. Clark then...
He sent the Hairbuyer to, I think he went to Williamsburg. Yeah. Yes.
Invaded and defeated the Shawnee near modern-day Springfield, Ohio. Governor Patrick Henry then promoted Clark to Brigadier General, command of all the troops in Kentucky and the Illinois Territory. Washington assigned Clark to attack Fort Detroit, but plans fell out for the invasion when troops sent by Washington were defeated before arriving. In 1782, the British and Native Americans again attacked Kentucky at Bryan Station and eventually defeated the Kentucky militia at the Battle of Blue Licks. Clark responded once again to lead an expedition into Ohio in retaliation and destroyed many villages along the Miami River. This was the last major expedition of the Revolutionary War. Now, George Rogers Clark attacks on Native Americans brings him into modern-day criticism. This is just another example of how it's hard to judge the men of yesterday by today's standards. Treaties were made with the Native Americans north of the Ohio River, but raids into Kentucky continued. In 1786, he yet again led 1,200 men against Native American villages along the Wabash River. The men almost mutinied, and he was accused of being drunk on duty. There was an investigation, and Clark was proven innocent of all charges, but his reputation had been damaged. At this time, Clark moved to Indiana, near modern-day Clarksville, and that's when his financial issues started. He borrowed money to finance his campaigns, but poor record-keeping caused Virginia and the U.S. government to not reimburse him. He paid the Army out of his own pocket. Eventually, Clark was rewarded 150,000 acres of land in southern Indiana, but he didn't have the money to develop it. In 1793, he offered his services to France to take British settlements along the Mississippi River. France made him a major general. Washington prevented Americans to take part in the conflict. The French ambassador was called back to France, and the mission fell out. The French did not reimburse Clark for the supplies that he had purchased for the expedition. Clark lost almost all of his land to his creditors and was only able to develop a small grist mill. In 1803, he moved to his retirement home on the Ohio River, across from Louisville. While living here, his brother William Clark of the famous Lewis and Clark expedition recruited the first members of the Corps of Discovery. They were known as the 9 Young Men from Kentucky. And it's from here the Lewis and Clark expedition stepped off. In 1809, he suffered a stroke and fell into the fireplace. One of his legs were burned so bad that it had to be amputated. He was sent to live with his sister and brother-in-law, Major William Croghan, at Locust Grove Farm here in Louisville. In 1812, Virginia awarded him a $400 a year pension. That's about $8,500 today. They also awarded him a ceremonial sword for his service. This is not even close to reimburse General Clark for all his sacrifices for his own country. In 1818, General George Rogers Clark suffered a second stroke and died. He was buried at Locust Grove, but he was moved to Cave Hill in 1869. And he's buried right there. He's buried next to his family, General Jonathan Clark, the second in command under General Lincoln at Brandywine, Monmouth, and others. He was captured and eventually released. He's also buried next to one of his other brothers, Captain Edward Clark, and other family members. His youngest brother, William Clark from the Lewis and Clark expedition, is buried in St. Louis. After his death, Virginia awarded his estate $30,000 for his expenses. But as time went on, more deaths were found, and the last payment to his estate was in 1913. General George Rogers Clark has several things that are named after him, such as counties, towns, and schools. He has a monument in Vincennes on the site of Fort Sackville, one of Clark's biggest conquests. The monument is granite and has 16 Doric columns. Inside the monument is a 7.5-foot bronze statue of Clark, surrounded by 7 murals of Clark's adventures.
And those go like up the entire wall. They are massive. In the interior, it's just empty with all those murals, and it is just you are so tiny. And of course it was worse because I walked in and there's a like a little guard who just, clicks a button. He just maintains counting people who come in. And I walked in at a point where I was the only one inside. And so I walked in, and as soon as I did, I heard click, 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 click. Like it just echoed around the whole place. I just looked over at him, and I walked around in there. I was only in there for about 5 minutes, just kind of looked around because everyone else was going outside and walking around. I wanted to walk around the fort and stuff, but giant murals. I want to see if he's going to get into how the fort was taken. I'll talk about it if he doesn't, because when you go there, there's a visitor center and you can watch a film on it. And it's, like I say, it's brutal.
Each mural is 28 foot tall and 16 foot wide. And each mural took artist Ezra Winter and his 6 assistants 2 years to complete. They are Kentucky, entering the Great Valley; Cahokia, peace or war with the Indians; the Wabash, through the wilderness and flood; Vincennes, the British barrier to the west; Fort Sackville, Britain yields possession; Marietta, the Northwest, a new territory; St. Louis, the way opened to the Pacific. Other statues near the area are of Francis Vigo, the Italian merchant who worked as a spy for George Rogers Clark, and one of Father Pierre Guibault, the Patriot priest. For a man that had so much success in early life, he died a simple man and is forgotten by most Americans. This man that was looked up to by so many has this simple gravestone right here. George Rogers Clark is a name that many people have never heard of, but his impact on early America cannot be denied, and we aim to keep his legacy alive. So, here we are at the gravesite of General George Rogers Clark, the Washington of the West, the conqueror of the Old Northwest, the founder of Louisville, and an American hero. And remember, family tree nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.
So, quick side note, I'm going to move. One of the reasons why he is forgotten is because he may have stuck his toe in the pool of treason. I'm just saying, we have to talk about that. When Aaron Burr went on his little disappearing act after he had killed Hamilton, he had talked about maybe getting an army and doing some stuff. Now, Burr was later found innocent or not guilty, whatever the thing was. But he was willing to cross that line. So you got to remember that. Give me just a second. All right, already paused it. Okay, sorry. I had a light about to fall. So for Fort Sackville, one of those things I was pointing to, the mural, was the flood. So the Wabash now isn't very big, isn't very wide. But, obviously, you don't know how rivers were a couple hundred years ago. I don't know. Well, anyways, when he went to attack, he had 180 soldiers with him. And as I said, it was February 25th, 1779. He's leading the soldiers, and the fields and everything had flooded. And it had been a really, really bad flood that year. And so it had flooded, according to the thing, about 5 miles. Now, not just like everything completely underwater, but the water had spread out about 5 miles. It's a pretty big flood. So him and his men are coming, and his Rogers Clark's second in command, he told him to get to the very back. And if anyone gets behind you, even with you or behind you, shoot them on sight. Can't trust that they're not going to try to run. Kill them. And he told everyone that this is this is the mission. And he didn't mess around. You have to instill fear to a point. Washington had to do the same thing. He had to hang people every now and then. It's unfortunate, but it has to be done because you have to let everyone know there are punishments. So these people, what should have been like they marched from Indiana. No. They were in Indiana. Where'd they march from? Did they march from the St. Louis area? Maybe it's Kaskaskia. I think it was Kaskaskia, the original capital of Illinois. They marched all the way over to Vincennes, crossing the Wabash. So, as they're getting there and they're starting to deal with it, it's winter, it's cold. He told his guys, in order to remain stealthy, we can't have fires at night. It's the Midwest. It's February. It's cold. Flood. Snow. No fire. Oh, by the way, we can't go hunting for food because we can't afford a gunshot to be heard by the fort. Right now, I'm out. I'm done. I'm already out of this one. 180 people go with him. 180 people end at the fort. Not one of them got sick. Some didn't even have shoes. They were walking through areas and they would find like little hills. Oh, I'm phasing. I'm on. They would find like little hills where they would sleep on top of that because they were out of the water. It sounds terrible. It took them like several weeks. So, just as they get there, they find a scouting party of 9 Native Americans that were coming from the fort. They were hunting for food. They capture them. They bring them to the fort, or they bring them to a distance of the fort. And he tells the British, "You're going to surrender." And the British are like, "Yeah, nah, we're not. You're cold. We're warm. You're hungry. We have food. It's not going to happen." There's Native Americans inside, and they're just like, "Okay, those are our people. So, let's go out and get them." The natives, and I'm saying this, I think this was a direct quote. We're like, "F them white boys. Let's go get them." I may have ad-libbed some of that, but we get the point. And the British were like, "No, we're going to stay inside. We're good." So Rogers Clark lines everyone up, pulls out the old trusty tomahawk, tells them, "Open the, surrender and come out." British say no. He tomahawks one of them back of the skull, kills him instantly. Pulls a tomahawk out of the guy's head, and he's saying, "You're doing this. You're making me do this. Surrender." No. Number 2. A little more preamble, blah, 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 blah. Surrender. Nope. Number 3. More dialogue. By now, the natives inside are singing and crying this like death chant. And I know it sounds morbid, but it was just kind of like they're singing to each other. The people out here are singing and crying. People inside are singing and crying, and it's like "you're going to die, but we will all see each other. The Great Spirit will bring us all together again," kind of thing. Kind of like if people were praying. British are unmoved. Completely don't care. So they tell the natives inside they don't want them getting a little, "Well, maybe we should take this fort over." So they arrest them and put them in the jail inside the fort. George Rogers Clark keeps going down the line. Number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He gets to the 9th and he's just like, "This is the last one." British don't care. Tomahawk. He walks forward and he's just yelling at the fort. He just can't believe that they allowed him to sacrifice these 9 people. And as he's yelling, he feels a tap on the leg. And he looks back and he realizes that the 9th native isn't dead. In fact, he took the tomahawk out of his skull, wiped his blood off the blade on his like little pant leg or whatever he was wearing, grabbed it by the blade so that the handle was turned. Let's take this hammer, for instance, right? It's in his skull. He pulls it out, cleans it, grabs it by the blade, and then taps Rogers on the leg and then holds this up like that. Rogers sees it and immediately goes into panic town and just, and he doesn't want the guy to suffer and kills him. Turns out that was the tribe leader. So the next morning, the British decide, "Yeah, you know what? We were thinking about it. We're going to go ahead and surrender." You feeling any rage? Yeah, I was too when I heard it. So the natives inside are released. They immediately exit the fort. They want nothing to do with the British. They come out. George Rogers Clark had all the natives partially buried. But it's winter. They didn't bring shovels. So they're just kind of buried by snow and stuff. Natives come out. George Rogers Clark approaches them and tells them he's sorry that it had to happen this way, and they stop him. And they're like, if roles were reversed, we'd do the same thing to you. You don't have anything to regret. We would do the same. It's war. What we're mad at isn't you. We're mad at them. Because not only did they arrest us, they forfeited the fort the next morning. They could have done it last night. And that native tribe basically says, "You'll never hear from us again. We'll never bother you again." We can't trust them. and obviously you are at war with us, so we can't do anything. So they help them load the dead bodies up onto horses, and that tribe takes off. And it sounds like the tribe was lost to history. Is that true? That part, I don't know. Is it true that's how it all happened? Who knows? The story could be changed and embellished to make Rogers Clark look like just a warrior, and on the other end look like a psychopath. But never been in that situation, so I can't tell you if it's, I don't know. But that's the story. It's brutal. George Rogers Clark, and I've talked about this before. Also, Kaskaskia, which is like a little island on the river in the Mississippi. It was the original. Was it an island? Maybe it's on the other side of the Mississippi. I've never been there. I want to go. There was a fort there when the Revolutionary War first started. He sends his spy into, I believe it was that guy, sends him into Kaskaskia. And Kaskaskia had a fort there that the British controlled. Around this fort was like a community of, I think the Russians were there, Spanish were there, British were there, Americans were there, French were there, and the natives were there. And these are all frontier people who are in the fur trade. They're catching and trapping, I guess would be the same word, same thing. They're shooting them in the head and killing them. It's the same thing, right? My bad. So, it's kind of, they're all working together, and it's hard frontier. The British are there, right on the river, right on the Mississippi, and they're, doing their thing. Whether they knew the war had started, I don't remember, or it was lost to history. And if they did know, they looked at it like, the war's way over there. We are way over here. It ain't going to reach us. So why alert everyone? We're all fine. Do our thing. So Clark has his guys infiltrate this little town and realizes that nobody knows anything. They're all just living their lives. So maybe the British haven't said anything, or they don't know. So that night, I'm going to say they don't know. And I say that judging by what happens. Clark and his men infiltrate the fort at like midnight, and the fort's unlocked. So they just walk on into the fort. Don't fire a shot, arrest everyone, and they split them to go to Fort Detroit and to Colonial Williamsburg. Well, Williamsburg. It's now Colonial Williamsburg. They get them out, and then sometime an hour later, maybe an hour or two later, after they're gone, he turns the guns on that town over and commences a battle where it seems like the British are firing on the town and firing all over and shooting all over the place as though there's some kind of enemy they don't know about. Or the townspeople suddenly feel like, why are the British trying to kill us? So everyone scatters, or they hunker down. And this goes on for, I think, up to about 40 to 48 hours. And then the fighting ceases. The shots fired cease. And then all of a sudden, George Rogers Clark runs into town and declares himself the hero who's just taken over the fort and stopped the British from trying to kill all of you. There's a war that's going on, a Revolutionary War, an American War of Independence. And by God, I need your help. And everyone in that fort's like, you've saved our lives. We pledge allegiance to you, good sir. I'm not going to do the Elon Musk. But they all pledged. And that is grade A psychological warfare. Because no one asked what happened to the British. He was like, oh, we got them out of here. They're under arrest. They're being escorted out right now as we speak. And everyone was like, You saved our hides, my friend. And he's like, you betcha I did. And they were like, what are you winking at us for? He's like, oh, my bad. I thought you were in on this. Yeah. So that's Vince. That was his attack on Fort Sackville. And then the other one was Kaskaskia. I mean, be honest. You live in that town. You think everything's good. And all of a sudden this happens. And then he comes strolling and he's like, I saved you from the British. There's a war going on. Will you help me? Yeah. You just saved my life, dude. Absolutely. What do you need? I got, you need my help. Yeah, weapons. Do you need underwear? I'll take mine off right now and give it to you. Like, I'll do whatever you need. And that's exactly what people did. Minus the underwear thing. I think they just were like, I'm not going that far, but I think we get it. But yeah, that's Fort Sackville. It's not Fort Sackville. That was Kaskaskia. But Fort Sackville was the killing of the natives. And then the British just decided the next day after, their tea at night and then their breakfast, they were like, yeah, let's surrender. Savage times. All right, we're going to end it here. I hope you enjoyed the video, not necessarily, you understand. Until next time, have a good day, have a good night.